so great to see you.
You
Thanks for giving us some of your time. Let's get to know you a little bit.
Okay, sounds good.
So tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jennifer Lannon. I'm one of the co-founders of Freeze.Health with Sidonia, my best friend and co-founder. And I froze my eggs in August 2018. I was 26. I live in Miami. I don't know. What else is there to know?
Well, you work in the healthcare space, and so that's kind of what launched you into pivoting or thinking about freezing your eggs, right?
Yeah, totally. I go to a bunch of healthcare innovation conferences where they talk about like all of the new cool stuff that's going on in healthcare. And I went to one a few years ago where they were talking about egg freezing, and that was really the first time that I had ever I had heard about it before, but it just kind of like hit me in the face, like, oh my God, this is amazing, and like I really need to think about this.
So you had never heard of it before, and
I think I had heard of it. I knew what it was. I had like a general awareness, but I had just never actively thought about it. And he was speaking about basically like your best chance at success fertility wise is freezing your eggs right now. And I was like, wow, this is crazy and
mind blowing.
Yeah, like he presented all the stats and I was like, oh my God, I need to go freeze my eggs right now. It took about 3 years after that, but I just started paying more and more attention to egg freezing and looking up articles and things and talking to friends about it since then. And yeah, 3 years later, I actually did it.
So when you were doing your initial research and you were thinking about egg freezing, did it seem scary or expensive to you? Or did you just figure out like, hey, where there's a will, there's a way, I'm going to figure this out?
It seems scary and expensive for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the fact that you have to inject yourself every day and you have to go in for so many blood draws, those were my two biggest things. I've always had a fear of needles and I've, gotten more used to them over time, but I had to really kind of work myself up to that. And even like going up to it, like the day of doing it, I was still nervous about like, how am I going to inject myself and how am I going to get all of these blood tests done? Like I can't even doing one a year is like horrible for me. So that was big. And then the price as well. It took me a few years as well. When I first heard about it, I was only about 2 or 2.5 years out of college. So I really didn't have that much savings. But over time, I kept like getting promoted and getting higher salary and having more savings. And so it took me a while to get to the point where I felt comfortable financially to do it as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you went through the actual procedure itself, how did that feel? Like, was it what you expected, and was it everything that you had researched?
Yeah, so I was prepared. I feel like you hear like horror stories of people that have
From the news and the press.
Yeah. And I know you also chatted with Sidonia about her story, and she had a little bit harder of a go at it than I did. So I went right after her. I went a couple weeks after her. She did it in July of 2018. I did it in August of 2018. And so hearing her story, I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm really scared because she was having, at the end, she was really fatigued. She had really bad cramps and she was just like really, down for the count for those last few days. And so I was just kind of the entire time like, well, I feel fine right now.
That?
Yeah. Like I really didn't feel any side effects at all the entire time. And I kept being like, okay, well,
when's it going to work?
Like knocking on wood, nothing's happening yet. And then it was, then I was ready for the trigger shot and I still was feeling totally fine and did the trigger shot, still felt fine. I'd say like the morning that I went in for the procedure, I was like pretty crampy, but I was like on my way to the office to go under. So that was fine. Mm-hmm. And then I actually I woke up after the procedure with pretty bad pain. But like the anesthesiologist just came in and gave me some like IV hard stuff.
Yeah.
More than just the
fluids.
Mm-hmm. Fluids. So that helped. And then after that, I just did the normal like Tylenol and Advil and still felt like crampy the next couple of days. But after like, I'd say 2 days after the procedure, I was back to like totally fine.
Yeah, and I guess it just goes to show that everybody's egg freezing experience can be very personalized and individual, and that just because a friend had a certain experience doesn't mean that your experience will be the same.
Yeah.
And each of our bodies are so temperamental, and so
Yeah.
you don't know how you're going to respond to the meds until you actually do it.
Yeah. And I always say that every time people ask me how it was. I was like, I always say, like, for me, it was really easy, but everyone is different. And I've heard people that have it worse. But I do think it's important to show that, like, not everyone is having crazy mood swings
Yeah.
and can't get out of bed. And, like, I was honestly totally fine. I was working every day. Granted, I was working virtually, so that really helped with being able to go in the office for appointments and having a flexible schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it was, like, honestly not that big of a deal.
And then how did you get to decide like which clinic you're going to do and kind of those pieces? Because I know you girls had reached out to me earlier in 2018. You discovered the podcast Ecology Club, and that was kind of like part of your doctor shopping that you started doing.
We loved that episode. That helped us so much. And we basically, so I was looking mainly in Miami and in New York. I have a bunch of friends. My best friend lives in New York. My best friend other than Estonia lives in New York. I had wanted to kind of like spend some time there for personal and professional reasons anyway. So I figured I was either going to do it in Miami or I was going to do it in New York. And so I called all the clinics in Miami to find out their pricing, and they were all pretty much the same pricing within maybe a few $100s. They were all around $7,000 more or less. And they charged
just for freezing. Did it include the anesthesiology too?
I think we built that in with our pricing. So if it says like on our website, for example, on Freeze.Health, we build the anesthesia into each of the prices. So I think we added that in. It was like 6,000 some at most of them. And when you put the anesthesia in, it was 7,000-ish.
Which is still pretty high
which is still pretty high.
Yeah.
And people are shocked when I told them I went to New York to freeze my eggs because it was less expensive, but that's the main reason why I did it. So I went to Extend Fertility, which when I went there in the summer of 2018, they were $4,750 for a cycle. They've since increased their prices. Now we're in the fall of 2018, so now they're charging $5,500 for a single cycle of egg freezing. That includes the anesthesiologist. And one of the reasons I really liked going to Extend was that two things. First of all, you could go in. I didn't even give them any payment information until I was starting until I committed to the cycle. So I really loved that. Like I wasn't going to have any surprise, fees or pricing. So the initial consult that I went in for, they did the ultrasound, they did the AMH blood draw, which they billed to my insurance. And then I also had a second consult with the doctor, and I didn't pay Extend for any of that, which I just like really loved, that I felt like they weren't nickel and diming me for everything. And then the other reason I chose Extend is because they're an only egg freezing practice. So like the women who are the advisors there, like the fertility advisors, and help you through the journey. It's like women just like me, where, like my fertility advisor, and we like actually had a mutual friend in common or something like that. And, they'll email you and send you calendar invites and things, which I just felt like they kind of got the user experience of what I was looking for more than some of the other clinics in Miami. None of the clinics in Miami have like an egg freezing only office.
Right. And there's pluses and minuses with egg freezing only clinics versus a fertility clinic that can do both. And I think that a lot of them are sometimes they start out as doing both, and then they have a specialized division for egg freezers, because we are just a different mindset. We're not trying to get pregnant right now. So an average fertility cycle is about $12,500 when you want to go back and use your eggs and make embryos and try to get pregnant now. So I think, right around that $5,000 is very reasonable, because that's half of what an egg freeze or a total cycle would cost.
Right.
An egg freezing cycle. So that makes sense. And so like, did you have any discussions with your clinic about like where your eggs would go after you stored them? And
Yeah, so I decided to actually not take the standard route. Extend, they don't store eggs on site long term, so they ship all of their eggs to a long term freezing facility in Massachusetts. And I had known through my research of the clinics in South Florida that a lot of them were sending them to a local long term storage facility that basically does the same thing. And I knew that I could ship them. And so it was cheaper to do it at the one in South Florida, and I knew that they would be right here. So I probably was just going to go with the cheapest option that I found.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of the $450 a year, which they were charging at the Massachusetts facility, I shipped them down to Florida, and it's a facility called Breed Protect, and I pay $275 a year at that facility. Plus, I got free shipping because of the Eggology Club discount. So.
No problem, no problem. Yeah, I know. That's what the Egg Club community is for, is to help drive these costs down. And that's why I love so much what you and Sedona are doing with Freeze.Health too, because I think that it's really great that there's a one hub platform where people can learn about their options. And it's just about having options. And I think that you echo a lot of that. So I'm so glad you guys found my resources, and we became friends online and in person, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say a big congrats because we were both featured in the New York Times together. So that is a big accomplishment on both of our fronts. Exciting to have the conversation that's happening in the news and the media, be changing, because the last 3 years has been rough. I mean, every single time I got interviewed, and Jen, I'm just so glad that you don't have to experience this, that it's kind of like passing the baton to you, that, a lot of the feedback and the perception of the media was that, that poor girl had to freeze her eggs. And that's not how I felt about it. And I think you kind of echoed some of that as well.
Yeah.
That
Totally.
It's more of an empowering.
Definitely. And I mean, I'm lucky that I lead a very privileged life. I have amazing friends. I have an awesome job. I'm financially stable. I love where I live. And for me, really the thing that was nagging me the most was this timeline. I'm dating and nothing serious is, progressing, and that timeline for when I'm going to have a family just keeps getting pushed back. And that's what was really making me the most nervous out of everything in my life, which is kind of silly. I mean, it's great that everything else was going so well, that was the thing that was making me the most nervous. But this was an awesome thing that I could do to, again, not fully take that worry out of my mind, or be 100% secure in the fact that I'm going to be able to have a kid at whatever age I want, but to help reduce some of that and help give me a little more comfort and space to explore in a more extended timeline.
Yeah, and it just provides us with other options that can help lead towards marriage, family, and kids. And so then you don't have to feel you're only 26, but I remember being 26, and now I'm 10 years older than you. Things still haven't changed. It's the one piece of the puzzle that we really don't have control over, because even the most stable relationships could end and not be your parenting partner.
Right. And even if I met someone now and I got married and I had kids with them, who's to say that we aren't going to fall out of love and I'm going to fall in love with someone else and I'm going to want to have kids with them? And, even when you are in a stable relationship and have found the person you think you're going to have kids with, you never know what's going to happen. And
they could have cancer, or something could happen.
They could die, they could cheat on you and you want to divorce them. All of these things could happen. And so I'm struggling with trying to find someone to date right now, but then it's all these other things also have to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a little
or
bit
baby number 2. We could have baby number 1, fine, and then we want to extend our family and grow our family, and now this is another way to do that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, how was your results? How did everything turn out?
They were pretty good. So they took 32 eggs on the day of the retrieval, and then The next day they told me 23 of them were mature enough to be frozen. So I'm really excited to have 23 eggs
In the bank.
and they're eggs from when I was 26. So
Yeah.
that means they're pretty good quality, hopefully. So yeah.
Have you ever thought about freezing multiple times, or is it just right now you feel good about your 23 eggs in the bank?
I feel good about my 23 eggs. I mean, I know that I have over a 90% chance, I think well over a 90% chance of being able to have at least one kid from the number of eggs I have and the age that I froze them. So that's another reason why I think having egg freezing come into the conversation earlier so women can have the facts. You know, like a lot of people think that I'm crazy because I froze my eggs at 26, but hey, I did it once and I don't think I'm ever going to have to do it again because I'm not planning to have a huge family, like maybe 2 kids. And maybe I do another round if I think I'm going to maybe want to have a bigger family, or I don't know. But I think like I'm very comfortable with what I have right now. And for the financial reasons, I like encourage people to explore freezing earlier because you are much more likely to have to do less cycles to get the same percent chance of having a baby if you do it younger.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Your eggs freezing in your 20s are much better than when you freeze in your older age.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, this is such a great time to spend together. I'm so glad you're able to chat. And thanks so much for sharing openly about your own egg freezing story. And we'll all have to check out Freeze.Health and tell our friends, and then join the egg club so you can get discounts and discount pricing too.
Seriously, it was so helpful. And it saved me a lot of money. And also just knowing that there were other people that could like help support me throughout the journey that had been there before was really helpful.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for spending a little bit of time with us.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Val.
Bye.